Good morning, all of you. Today, in continuation with the same history chapter, Independent India, we'll have a look at the birth of five-year plans. Now, in this chapter, we have already seen the condition of India when India got independence, what were the problems that were facing India when we got our independence, and what was the result of partition, that how so many people they were killed, so many people were maimed, so many got orphaned, so many lost their lives, and so many people got displaced, lost their jobs, lost their families, were separated from their families, and we have also seen the economic condition of India was very poor, and then after that, we had a look at how India got a constitution, what are the important features of our Indian constitution, and then we also had a look at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee of the constitution. Then we also had a look at the formation of states on the basis of languages, and so all that we have done. Now we move on to the birth of five-year plans. Now, the biggest problem that faced India when we got independence was the problem of poverty. Now, under the British rule, the Britishers ruled over us for approximately 200 years, and during that time, they exploited us, and they treated India as a colony, took raw materials from here at cheap prices, sent them to Britain, finished the goods, again brought them here and sold at high prices. They were making huge profits, and they were treating India as a colony, and they were exploiting the people, implementing taxes, levying taxes on anything and everything. Like there was a tax on salt also, there was cattle tax also, there was grazing tax also, and so many other laws came into being under the colonial rule, and then under the British rule there was also this drain of wealth. We have discussed about it earlier also, that there was a drain of wealth, that the wealth from India, our money was going from Indian market to Britain, and why? Because most of the Britishers that were working here, they had their families back in England. So, they were sending their salaries, a large part of it, back to England to their families. And after completing their work, they were getting their pensions also back in England. So, the money was going from Indian market to Britain. So, there was a drain of wealth under the British rule. And so, the condition of India, the economic condition of India was very acute, and it was in decline, and it was like totally devastated at that time. And so the biggest problem that faced the new nation was the problem of poverty. And so in 1950, the government they started the five-year plans, and this they did by setting up the planning commission. Now can you tell me why five-year plans? Why not 1, 2, 3, 4-year plans? Why only five-year plans? Yes, class 80. Why five-year plans? Why the government started five-year plans and not four-year plans or three-year plans? Come on. Very simple question. Why they started five-year plans? Because the term of the government is 5 years. That is why five-year plans. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that was why five-year plans.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
this new planning commission, it was given the task or the job to give roles. Like what were the roles given to it? That now they stressed on the development of agriculture and the setting up of new industries. And so now which new industries they should be started by the government, and which should be given to the private sector or private individuals, private capitalists to start. So the planning commission was given the job to decide that which industries would be started by the government, and which would be started by the private individuals. And then they also had to make a plan so as to achieve a balance between the different states and regions. And we have earlier also seen that there was a problem of unity, and along with it also the problem of development. And the problem of development was such that the prosperity, the development that we got after independence, now that had to reach all sections of society, all groups of people. And so there had to be a balance, so that not it will not be such that one region or one state got many very prosperous, and the other states they lagged behind. So even the prosperity, it had to go in a balanced way. So that is why the planning commission, it was given the job to do that. And so that was the first planning first 5-year plans, and now under the second 5-year plan, which was started in 1956, the main focus was on building of large dams and the setting up of industries. And then it had also to decide the allocation, means the division of investment between sectors which were involved in production. Now so many sectors were involved in production. Now they had to decide that how much money would go into which sector or which department. And in addition to that, they also encourage the production, the domestic production of industrial goods, means the production of industrial goods in India. Prior to that, India was importing these industrial goods, but now they stress that these goods be made in India. And as a result of that, 5 steel mills, they were set up at Bhilai, Durgapur and Rourkela, and the coal production, it was also increased. And then in 1957, under Homi J. Bhabha, the Atomic Energy Commission, it was also formed, and then the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, it was also established as a research institute. Now, there was so much importance given in the second plan, or the second 5-year plan, towards industry and towards agriculture. And so many people became supporters of this view, and many of the people, they criticized this approach of the government, and some felt that they have given inadequate emphasis, means they have given more emphasis on agriculture, and others felt that the government, it has not given due importance to primary education and the spread of primary education. And many others believe that they have not given any thought to the environmental implications of the development of the industries, means they have thought about setting up of industries without even giving a thought as to what would be the environmental hazards because of that. And Miraben, who was Mahatma Gandhi's follower, she wrote in 1949, and let's see what she said, that by science and machinery, that through science and advancement and research and technology, man could get benefits for a time, for a period of time, for a short period of time, but ultimately through that, man will come to desolation, to destruction, and to nothing. But what you said is that if we want to survive as a physically healthy and a morally decent species, then we need to study the laws of nature and how nature balances itself. Then only if we work according to the laws of nature, then we'll be able to create a balance, and then only we'll be able to prosper. So that was the view of Miraben, who was a devout follower of Mahatma Gandhi. Now we move on to Nehruji's foreign policy. Now we have already seen that what was the condition of India when India got independence, and so apart from handling that tumultuous or confused situation that we were in after independence, now Nehruji's contribution, it also lies in the foreign policies. Now he being the first Prime Minister of independent India, and so it was on his shoulders as to in which direction he leads his country to. And now his foreign policies, they are characterized by two major ideological aspects, or two major ideologies. Now the first is that he wanted India to have an independent identity and not be openly overt, means not be openly or showing open commitment to any of the two superpower blocs that were at that time, means namely the USA and the USSR. So what he wanted, that India should have its own independent identity, and it should not be seen as just being a supporter country of either USA or USSR. And his second ideological aspect was that in matters of international affairs, he had this unshaken, very strong faith in goodwill and honesty. So what his view was that if we are we live in brotherly love with all nations of the world, and if we are honest with each other, then we'll be able to have good international relations with the other countries. Now his first ideological aspect, now it led to the formation of NAM, or the Non-Alliance Movement. What that means is that a country not being aligned openly to any of the two superpower blocs at that time, and his second faith in international affairs. Now that was shaken by the Chinese invasion in 1962. Now, Nehruji, there were some international people at that time who were of the same view as Nehruji and who supported Nehruji also, like Tito, Nasser, Sukarno, and Nkrumah. But at that time when Nehruji, he was talking about a non-aligned movement or an association of nations. Now, this alliance of new nations, it was not given much importance at that time. They felt that no, there was no need and it was not taken seriously at that time. But however, the importance of NAM, or this association or this alliance, it was soon felt, and it was found out that NAM, or non-aligned movement, it had clear objectives and those clear objectives included the gradual, means slow decolonization of the world, and a strong statement that the member countries were not party to the escalating tension. Now there were two superpowers at that time, like I told you, the US and the USSR, and so there were so many tensions between these two countries and the supporters of these two countries, and it was felt that it could lead to a Cold War. And so what Nehruji thought was that the people of this alliance, non-aligned movement, now they will make a strong statement that they are not party to any of the two superpowers, and it will finally, this alliance would finally lead to a gradual decolonization of the world. Means the countries would have their own independent identity and not showing commitment to any of the two superpowers at that time. And as you know, in 1991, 1992, later on USSR, it was disintegrated also. Now we move on. Now the Chinese invasion, it forced Nehruji to change his stance on international affairs, and now it forced India, I would say. It not only made India, but it forced India to see that how important it is to have a strong military of its own, and not totally depend on peaceful discussions and peaceful negotiations in matters of international affairs. So because of the Chinese invasion of 1962, there was a change in Nehruji's ideology concerning on international affairs, and so now it was felt that not only peaceful negotiations but a strong military was also a requirement. And for his first ideological aspect, NAM, now by 1970s, a large number of countries, they had joined the non-aligned movement. Now 15th August 1947, it was the day when India became independent, and now if we look at present, we are making quite good progress, and we have been on a way, on a long road to success, as if we concern and compare to what we were at the time we got our independence. Now this new nation, India, it was born on this Indian subcontinent, and it was after a bloody partition, and we have already seen that millions of people, they were killed, and people who have lived like brothers for their entire lives, and since so many generations, and they were after each other's life during partition and during the riots before and during partition. And so this new nation, this new country, India, which was born, it was born out of this partition, and now independent India, it was formed, but it was with these these flames which blazed across the land, means these blazes, these flames of hatred and division, and through that India was born. And yet if we see so many decades later, what is a decade, by the way? What is a decade?
Ma'am, 10 years.
Alright. So
Ma'am, 10 years.
Yeah, right. A period of 10 years. And so yet so many decades later, the country that emerged from the wreckage, and means from the destruction, the desolation that we had under the British rule, now India is the world's largest democracy. So if we compare to what we were at that time and what we are now, we are the world's largest democracy. And now after years of rapid, very fast economic growth, India has taken its place as one of the giants of the 21st century in the world. Alright, so that is all the time we have for today. Have you understood what we have done today?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, everything clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Alright.
ma'am.
Okay, so for today, we
Yes.
will stop here.